Thank you, David. All right, so I'm going to provide an overview, understanding sensitive to the fact that all the professionals are actually in the room. And what makes up our local government and provide the services we use in choosing to live here. The village is responsible for the basic needs for civilized community life: village planning, zoning, building, engineering, streets and sanitation, water and sewers, community safety, adjudication, emergency services, firefighters, and more. While each of our other separately managed governmental partners has a specific area of service: education, we have D97 and D200, our parks, the Oakmark Park District, library services, the Oakmark Public Library, and the Township. Each has a separately elected board of Oak Park residents doing their civic services for our community, all serving 4-year terms, where every other odd year, we are electing half of their board, except the Township, where all positions are elected together. The Township is where the bulk of our human and social services are managed: senior services, youth, general assistance, and we are lucky to have a village assessor who can help you challenge your taxes free of charge. Also approved with the Township budget is the Community Mental Health Board, whom, as David said, you will hear from later, which acts as a funding body for the social service agency contracts. The Community Mental Health Board serves between 12 and 20 social service agencies in our community annually. The next opportunity to serve on the I already did that, sorry. Much like I appoint members of the Community Mental Health Board, are professionals interviewed by their peers and appointed by the elected Township supervisor, approved by the Township Board. Much like I appoint members of the village commissions with the approval of the village board, of which we also have 20 topics in our commissions, ranging from disability access to environment and energy. On that brief note, the village board also approves formally members of the Housing Authority. I'm not sure that everybody knows that. Why? Because in 1946, we were authorized by the federal government to have a housing authority by application. The Housing Authority manages our housing vouchers. The purpose of the Community Mental Health Board, established in 1973 by Oak Park voters, is to assist in planning, developing, coordinating, evaluating, and funding mental health services in Oak Park. I stress those two things, the Housing Authority and the Community Mental Health Board, because what all this illustrates is that Oak Park has intentionally planned for services for every aspect of life through the structure that is Oak Park's government, with accountability lying ultimately in the hands of voters to elect individuals to each of these boards that share the vision you have for living here, including public health. The Village of Oak Park is a state-certified public health department. Currently, the governor's emergency order provides the local public health department certain authorities to protect the health of our community. So everything that I have outlined covers every aspect of life, from your streets and your sanitation, to your education, to housing, to mental health, to not every community has all of this. We can have the debate on whether our government does too much, but we need to save that for another day. The structure is the result of intentional choices of Oak Park voters. In 1952, voters chose the village manager form of government over a strong mayor like Chicago's to alleviate corruption with too much authority on an individual elected person who may or may not have the professional training to manage the complexities of a municipality like Oak Park. Under the village manager form of government, all of our boards have one employee. Boards provide the vision and identify goals, and it is the job of that one professional employee to implement the goals and priorities of each board, largely through approving our budget, which should speak directly to those goals. Eric Davis is up next, and he will talk more about that dynamic and the importance that electeds allow that one individual to do their job. Together, we share overarching goals: sustainability, social justice, equity, and community safety. We collaborate through a number of IGAs. One of our greatest successes has probably been the early childhood collaboration. Truth is, we could easily make the topic of Oak Park's government structure, its function, and all that drives decision-making in our village into a graduate-level series easily. One of the first gifts I received after becoming village president, which was only a cup, so it was way below the $50, said, one tree, many nuts. So we are no short of opinions in our community, but very proud of the intentionality in how we then created a structure. I happen to believe it is quite ingenious in theory. Challenge is that all working as it was designed without overtaxing residents requires all of us, electeds, and our administrators to be willing to listen, communicate, share, work together, and stay in our own lanes all at the same time. I am super excited for the future because I believe we are in agreement on that and have the professional staff in place to help us get there. We have a long history of collaboration through IGAs and 3 mechanisms for working to do that: IGOV, COG, which is Council of Governments, which includes the head administrative of every governmental body as well as the head elected official, and regular manager meetings. My vision is that we not only reach out for partnership in implementation, which is often when those IGAs come together, of individual goals, but also in the planning and early learning of those discussions. We have partners who are ahead of, I'll pick on the village on topics. The library and social justice and equity, the park district and sustainability. So in those early discussions, to be turning to the very partners that are serving the same constituency for what it is that they learned on that journey would only serve all of us better. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eric and look forward to the discussion of the day.
Good morning. Thank you, Vicki. I want to focus a little bit more, maybe repeat a point from Vicki's remarks to sort of set rules of the road for the discussion. There are lots of ways that the public communicates with government, some of which are effective and others not as much so. So one of the purposes this morning is to help our residents understand how to best interact with government, to obtain the services that they want, to have their voice heard. I'm pleased to be serving my 4th term as an elected township trustee. And in terms of the social services that Vicki outlined that the township delivers and helps to deliver, I am part of your voice. I am part of the group that is our job is to help articulate what it is that you want to achieve and the kinds of things that you need and want. We are your voice for action. And it is that dynamic for action that I wanted to speak briefly about and reiterate again from what Vicki introduced earlier. The dynamic in all of the boards that we have here that are represented this morning is that the elected officials, the elected boards, have one employee. You're going to meet our employee, Gavin Morgan, in a little bit. But that's important because we exist, we are your representatives to the elements of our government that actually implement the missions of our various agencies. I as a board member, as a trustee, cannot direct staff other than our village manager through our township supervisor. And I say that that's important for people to understand. I've said a long time to new members that come to elective office, first you get sworn in, then you get sworn at. And a lot of that frustration comes from a feeling that when someone tells you something, they expect to be able to have that happen right away. Our government structures exist for a reason. They're very well considered and they're very open. But they rely on this fundamental dynamic for the elected officials to be communicating at a policy level to our executive leadership what it is that the agency needs to be doing. I can't call our Director of Youth Services and say, Megan, would you do this? Because that's just not how it works. Because otherwise, quite frankly, we don't get as much done. It is an efficient method. It's proved, as Vicki said, it was established in the village in the 50s. It stood the test of time. But we just want to reiterate, our job is to implement policy, to develop a budget, to develop a levy, and then to work with the agency to implement those policies and that direction that comes from the public. And so with that, that's why the feature one of the features this morning is the introduction of and discussion from our various executive leadership members. In each case, we're going to have a board member come and introduce that person to you, so that you can hear from them about what the different bodies of government do. But again, we're your conduit. That's what we're here for. That's what you elect us for, to be your voice for action within our agencies. And so with that, first on the list, I believe, is the village. I don't know, Vicki, if you want to introduce your new leader. Come on up. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric, and I'll keep clapping because I'm really happy to be introducing Kevin Jackson. He has not left yet. I don't know if we're at 60 days yet.
Not quite.
Not quite? Okay. So everybody please meet Kevin Jackson, our newly appointed village manager.
Thank you, President Skaman, and thank you to you all, and good morning. It's a great opportunity to be here to talk about intergovernmental cooperation. Obviously, I'm new to the community. It's been nearly 60 days, but this is definitely a good sign that we have an opportunity like this to come together and talk about how we serve the community together, collectively, collaboratively. It's very important, in every sort of municipal situation or city situation. However, when you have multiple jurisdictions serving the community separately, the community doesn't always see us that way. So we're going to talk about the village really quick. I know we have a list of speakers, so I don't want to take up anyone else's time. Just a quick overview. So the village, as the village manager, obviously I am appointed by the board to oversee the village operations, and so we have right now about 382 FTEs serving the village. Historically, that's about 50 less employees than the village has carried historically. I think in 2007 or 2008, there was a reduction from about 430 something employees down to this level. So I don't think the services have changed much since that time. So you can get a sense of how we're operating in terms of how lean things are. It's about $160 million all funds budget. There are a lot of times people who are not aware or are intimately knowledgeable about their city government or village government in this case. They're not always knowledgeable about how many different funds an organization like a city organization or village is managing. So with the village, we're managing 35 different funds. So most often when people think about village services, they think about the general fund, but there are special revenue funds, enterprise funds, altogether, again, about 35 different funds that we're managing as a village. The other unique, I think, aspect of the village of Oak Park is that we are working with 9 collective bargaining units to implement the services. That's pretty unique for a village or a city of this size, roughly 55,000 people. Just to give you a frame of reference, the last city that I worked for was about 470,000 people. We had 12 collective bargaining units. And as I understand it, I think the city of Evanston has 4 collective bargaining units. So just want to point some of these key facts out about the operating environment in Oak Park, because it's pretty dynamic. So while only 55,000 in population, there are a lot of aspects of it that resemble a large city. So 9 collective bargaining units. There are 21 boards and commissions that serve this community that we work with as well. So that's a little bit of sort of a profile of the city. I think as a lot of us in the city manager profession, we look at our role as managing multiple businesses within an overall sort of organization. So there are 13 operating departments within the village. I would add one. You have the city clerk's office, which functionally serves as a department head, but is an elected official. So essentially, there are 14 departments in the village of Oak Park. And then there are multiple lines of businesses within each one of these departments. So the village or city government operation tends to operate like a conglomerate. So that's something that a lot of people may not know. So let's see. We'll talk a little bit. I heard up front that there was some interest in talking about the services from an equity lens. Just real briefly, just few priorities that the board has declared recently within the last year, which were very attractive to me. First and foremost, just that the board has articulated a common set of goals is critical and very important. But the types of goals that they've articulated, I think, are very important and relevant for our future. So I'm just going to list some of those. The board has expressed an interest in community safety. They've expressed an interest in equity, and particularly racial equity, sustainability, protecting and supporting our neighborhoods, and also community affordability. So these are some pretty significant goals together. There are obviously some significant initiatives and projects that are related to these goals, but they're pretty much the framework from which we are operating as a city, as a staff to support the goals and the board's interest. So, but one of the things that's been really important just across our nation and where Oak Park has stepped up is on the issue of equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and particularly racial equity. So one of the things that I want to do real quickly, because when I got here, because I understand that the board's been interested in this in the last year, and they approved in their budget a position to help coordinate and plan to implement a program for promoting diversity, equity, and racial equity in particular, is I established a new position, Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. This position will report directly to me and work very closely with our senior leadership team and our Human Resources Director. This person will oversee what we will establish as the Office of Equity and Collective Impact. With the collective impact, I want to add emphasis to that because I think that's relevant to why we're here today, because none of these goals related to equity can be achieved in isolation of working with our partners in the community. So that's just one example of how we're going to be moving forward with this idea of administering services from an equity lens. We felt it was important to actually establish a position in the leadership structure that can work with all of us so that we can look at all of our services and policies through that equity lens as we move forward. I think for the first couple of years, it will be a fairly significant effort to look at all of our services comprehensively through this equity lens, but we'll also be looking at services and activities in real time and making adjustments as we go. So I would say I think one of the messages that I got before this was that there was an interest in each of us just kind of identifying something that we think is unique that people may not know. Well, President Skaman talked about, I think, really good about our local health department. Many of you probably know, but members of the public may not know, that the health department for the village of Oak Park is only one of 3 health departments in the state of Illinois. And I have a unique perspective on health departments coming from a similar operation with the city of Long Beach, California, where we were one of 3 local health departments in the state of California among Berkeley and Pasadena. And it's interesting. I just wanted to offer a unique perspective. I think we're in a really good position to have that service capacity in our community and not be completely reliant on external agencies such as the county. Not that we wouldn't partner with them, but I think it's just extra advantage to have a local health department. In this environment, in the last 2 to 3 years with the pandemic, we've seen a greater salience and focus on local health departments. But I can tell you, when I went to the city of Long Beach in 2017, and I was working with our health department there, they were kind of in the background and providing very valuable, robust diversity of services to serve the health needs of the community. And this health department is doing the same thing. But I think where they came out of the shadows is with the onset of the pandemic, and that's where a lot of people became familiar with health departments. And oftentimes, I guess in these times, the health department is typically associated with how they're managing the pandemic. But I just wanted to highlight the fact that health departments provide a comprehensive set of services that promote the health and safety of the community, and a lot of that sometimes now, because of the pandemic, has been in the background. So with that said, I think that concludes my remarks, and if there's an opportunity for questions, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
As most of you know, I'm Sandy Lentz. I'm now in my third term as an elected Park Board Commissioner, and I have the great pleasure of introducing Jan Arnold, who is our Executive Director. Jan, how are you?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jan Arnold, and I am the Executive Director of the Park District of Oak Park. I've actually been in my role this month 10 years. So again, it's been a lot of great things happen at the Park District over the last 10 years. I'm also an Oak Park resident. I lived here before I worked here. So it's great to be a part of making Oak Park a great place to live, work, and play. So as far as the priorities for the Park District, I think number one, from the lens of equity standpoint that most of you hopefully know about, is the new Community Recreation Center, which is currently under construction on Madison between Highland and Harvey, and will be open this spring. That facility, not only is it being constructed from an eye of equity, but also through that form of equity. We awarded 29% of the contracts to either minority-owned or women-owned businesses to help with that construction that is currently underway. From 3 to 6 p.m. each day after school, it will be free access to Oak Park resident kids from 6th to 12th grade to participate in a variety of different programs that will actually be planned by their own peers, because we will be hiring a youth engagement supervisor who will work with a board of youth teens to help them plan the activities that they would actually like to see for themselves. So that's one that we're very excited about. The other is providing scholarships, and we do provide a lot of scholarships. When I was actually hired 10 years ago, that was actually one of the questions that was posed to me, was we need help in getting out and reaching more to our community to get those out. We gave away at that point somewhere around $10,000, $12,000. I'm happy to report we're closer to $100,000 a year now, and that has been through a lot of outreach, not only working directly with School District 97, and getting partnered with their social workers to let those families know what we have, but also through outreach with different community groups and participation to let them know what we have. We actually had a forum just last 2 weeks ago, I believe, where we invited a variety of Black leaders in the community to talk about a variety of issues in our community and how we can better serve from a parks and recreation standpoint. And one of the things that they suggested was that we actually put directly on our cover of our program guide that scholarships are available. We will be doing that with the upcoming brochure. Additionally, we released a brand new website, and if you go onto it today, you'll see that one of the very first things that drops down is an icon that says scholarships are available. So again, just making sure that people have an understanding of what the activities that we have are to help us meet our priorities in the agency. And the last, and I kind of alluded to it, is really about reaching out to our community partners. So it's not just our government partners, but it's not-for-profit leaders, it's influential individuals in the community, and making making sure that we're reaching out and talking to people about what are the activities and services that they are wanting to see, so that we can make sure that we're invoking those into the activities that we provide each and every day. One of the new values that was actually adopted last year through our strategic planning process was that of inclusivity. And so again, we spent a lot of time figuring out exactly what that meant, but it is bringing all people, whether it's abilities, race, income, sexual orientation, all to the table. And that's something that we strive to do each and every day. As far as new collaborative efforts, I would say that we collaborate a lot, and I think that that's something that people don't always understand. I have phone calls with most of my partners in government agencies at least weekly, if not monthly, to talk about different things that we could do and work together. I will say that one of the newer ones that we are working on is with D200, and I'm sure Greg will spend a little bit more time talking about that. But from what I can see and where I stand, that has a lot of equity infused upon it. So I'll let him talk to that. The other one is, again, just continuing to work with the Township and maximizing our resources. And we partner with them on a variety of things, youth engagement supervisors, and how we work to help point our kids in the direction to make better choices, but also providing our buses when they're not being used so that they can transport seniors to much needed access to their appointments and other aspects. The library, the main library is actually adjacent to our property at Scoville, and they use that property often for different special events. We also house one of the libraries in one of our facilities at the Dole Center, and so we have a lot of collaboration opportunities there. And we also partner with them to bring their book bike for story time, etc., into the parks to meet people where they are, so that they are getting the services that we can provide to enhance the park opportunity. In regards to some of the things that you may not know, I'm always shocked in regards to people not knowing some things, because I think they're pretty obvious, but that's because I've probably been doing my job for 10 years. We are the Park District of Oak Park. We're not the Oak Park Park District, and that's the police department. So whenever someone tells me that OPPD, I'm like, well, you're talking about the police, right? So first of all, we'll get that straight. But we are doing a lot of great things, and one of the things you may not know is all those beautiful plants that you see in our 18 parks and around our facilities are actually, a majority of them are grown at the conservatory. So our staff grow them and install them for everyone to benefit from the beauty of those aspects. Another item that people may not know is that we are the owners and operators of 3 historic properties, which is the conservatory, which is open and free to individuals each and every day. The historic mansion, Cheney Mansion, that is on Euclid, and that grounds is open. Whenever we don't have a special event, it's open. It's a park. The high school knows that well. The high schoolers come there often for lunch. And so it is open to the community to utilize that parcel. And then Pleasant Home, which is also a historic mansion that is owned and operated by the Park District, and it is surrounded by Mills Park. And I will tell you that it was packed this last Saturday. We're going to make it the official prom site for photos before the prom, because there were probably 300 plus individuals in the park taking photos, but actually all 3 of our facilities were used for photos for prom. Actually, families reserved some of them so they could make sure that they had that great opportunity. Another thing that people may not know is that the Park District, serving a community our size of 55,000, should have over 500 acres of green space. We have 83. So if you think about Columbus Park, which is next door, that's over 100. So Columbus Park next door has more green space than we have. So we have to take a lot of care of the 83 acres that we have, which means that our staff are constantly working to maintain and upkeep those facilities. We do maintain D97's sports fields for them. We took that over several years ago, and I think it's really kind of improved and enhanced the quality of life. So all of our spaces are open to all of our community at all times, and I think that that's a good one to know about, because again, we are working hard to serve all those folks in our community. And the last thing that I'm proud of, maybe you guys don't know because we haven't released it yet, but the Park District of Oak Park for the second year in a row has been named a gold medal finalist for a community our size. And again, I think that it is a representation of not only the community's involvement in what we do, but a focus on those things which are important to all of us, including sustainability and social equity. So that's a recap of what we do at the Park District of Oak Park. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Shyla Kinhall, and I'm a District 97 school board member. And I am so pleased and excited to welcome Dr. Ushma Shah, who's our incoming superintendent. She hasn't started yet. She starts on June 1st. And just wanted to say a couple things about Dr. Shah. We are just so excited for the wealth of experience that she brings and her focus on equity and building on the strengths of others. So, welcome, Dr. Shah. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for clarifying, Shyla, that I'm not officially the superintendent of record yet. But I'm glad to be here. In addition to picking up some fun facts, like now I know where to expect prom photos to be taken and other important things that are really important to know. I really appreciate being here and taking in what you've shared and what it says about how Oak Park works and what matters. I appreciated, Dave, your reference to even naming partners instead of agencies and what that says about our values. Vicki, when you named, I think, listening, communicating, sharing, and staying in our own lanes, like those are the kinds of things that you want to come around when you named the focus areas of sustainability, social justice, racial justice, equity, and early childhood. I know I'm in the right place, especially on that last one. I appreciate, Gavin, the clarification of what it means to be set up in a way that people elected represent the population and the residents, but then the work is delegated to the executive directors, and really teasing out what that looks like in practice is such an important area of work. Kevin, I guess you're not going to be the new person in town for long, because I'm about to be the newest person soon. But I'm looking forward to working with you and appreciate even the early equity moves you've made. The time is now, and so we've got to do the things that need to be done right now. It sounds like you're moving on that, and your references and description of collective impact is certainly what it's about. And scholarships, where'd you go, Jan? Looking forward to working with all of you. So just taking in who you all are sharing Oak Park is, and I'm looking forward to figuring out how I can contribute to the history and to the vision that is here in the community. I also, in terms of equity, recognize and understand that the D97's equity policy 712, ensuring racial and educational equity policy, is what I've been hired to implement. And that will be not a side project, not here's our strategic plan and here's our equity plan, but one plan, which is how is it that we are centering the work of racial equity and making it a great school system for every single student, every single day. I'm so honored to be able to be part of this work with you. So I'm looking forward to continuing to hear who else is in the room here. And I guess, and Greg Johnson reached out to me as soon as I was named. So looking forward to all of our good work together. Thank you, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to say this for like the next 10 years, but it's great to see everyone in person again. Lovely catching up. So I am here to introduce Dr. Greg Johnson, PhD. I am going to brag on him for just a second. Oh, I'm a board member, by the way. Sarah Spivey, did I say that? Greg he wasn't the only one doing the work, but he had definitely one of the hardest jobs during a pandemic that anyone could have, both as associate superintendent and then this past year as his first year as a superintendent. And he has been fabulous. So I really just want to take this chance to publicly thank him for all of the incredible work that he and his staff did to keep our kids as educated as we could under the circumstances. And we just are finishing a really great year in person, fully in person. So thank you, Greg.
Well, thank you, Sarah. I'm going to start with something you don't know about me. From here on out, I'm going to be hiring Sarah Spivey to introduce me everywhere I go. So, thank you. Thank you very much. Let me start first at just high level. A lot of the themes that have been talked about already by the various other presenters are ones that I want to hit as well, as far as D200 is concerned. But I really want to stress two main areas for what we're focusing on at D200, both this past school year, the few years preceding this one, and for the foreseeable future. We talk, and we should. It's right. We talk a lot about equity in this community, and I'm going to talk more about that in just a moment. But we shouldn't make the mistake implicitly, as we do so, of thinking that any equitable pursuits are in some way at the sacrifice of the excellent education that we have to provide all of our students. We don't mean that. We don't say that as an institution. I didn't hear that in Dr. Shah's or anybody else's statements today. But that is something that can be kind of lurking underneath folks' perceptions and concerns and fears as we go about trying to improve the institutions that educate the vast majority of the students who are in this community. And so over the past year, what we've begun to do at OPRF is not talk about equity and excellence, or excellence and equity, common words and phrases that are packaged together in educational kind of lingo. But we've packaged it together, and so those two things aren't separate. You can't have one without the other. And so the pursuit that we've really gone after over the past few years is of equitable excellence. This is a school that over the past several years has, decades, longer than that, has produced some just absolutely amazing students' outcomes, young adults. You see this both in our tradition of excellence, and you see this year in and year out as you take a look at how our students perform on things like the standardized tests, right? The number of students who are on our stage at the end of the year who have received all A's in every single class they've ever taken and are recognized with the Scholarship Cup. We have to hold on to and we have to cherish those traditions and that pattern of excellence that we have at OPRF. It's a school that has continually ranked in the top 3 to 5% on all sorts of metrics, whether you're taking a look at SAT performance, AP performance, U.S. News and World Report puts us in that same area as well. And we're honored to be there, and we have to hold on to that and cherish that and challenge ourselves to improve that. And we've done that over the past few years, and we will continue to do that, not only in how we bring rigorous programming to our school, but how we diversify our programming for our students so that we aren't just thinking about those traditional academic pursuits that our kids go after, but thinking about post-secondary pathways that are beyond those, kind of those outside those traditional pathways that we typically think of. And I'm thinking about students who will transition into something other than your traditional 4-year university. Those are worthy pursuits after high school, and we need to shore up our programming there, and we're focused on that as well. But the equity work that we need to focus on at this school is very real. There is, despite that high level of historic achievement at OPRF, you know that we have these challenges in our community where all students aren't able to experience the same opportunities in the high school as all their peers. And this is a challenge that we take incredibly seriously, and we will continue to take a look at our curriculum, our instruction, our professional development, the methods of assessment that we use at this high school to help ensure that more and more of our student population is able to realize that level of excellence that has been in many ways our history. So the educational, the equitable excellence focuses is one thing, but I also want to highlight another real challenge that we have at OPRF, and that is with our facilities and our finances moving forward. Jan has already talked about a partnership that she and I have begun just really since January. We began these conversations about trying to find some resolution to the landlocked reality that we have at that high school. And so I really appreciate the strong collaboration that you've brought to that conversation and that your whole team has brought to that conversation, Jan. And I know we'll continue as we move forward and try to find a way to the goal of our new athletic director as we try to get every single one of our varsity programs on campus for all of their practices and their competitions. So that is something that is within grasp for us for the first time in the school's history, thanks to this partnership, and I'm really appreciative of that. But we have long-going challenges for our facilities and finances as well. We have a master facilities plan that you're all aware of, or maybe you're aware of, right? The Imagine plan that my predecessor, Dr. Pruitt-Adams, began with a large number of people in the community. That is a long-term master facilities plan with 5 large phases, and we are beginning now to take a serious look at the second phase of that, so to speak, Project 2, which involves taking a good look at how we can change, renovate, rebuild in some cases our physical education areas in the southeast corner of our building. There have been a lot of conversations about that in the community, a lot of questions that I've received over the past few years, and there's a lot of questions that we are going to continue to face in the coming years. And this is a good thing. This is we need a lot of voices to try to figure out the best way not only to improve the facilities for all the kids in this community, but also to find the right way to finance this work going forward. And our board has made it very clear that they want to tackle this work over the next several months, and that's exactly what we intend to do. So please keep your ears out for that work. As far as things you might not know, let me throw I'm going to say 3 things that you might not know about OPRF. First, we are well on our way to having, for the first time in our school's history, a sustainability policy, largely due to the press from Sarah Spivey, who made sure that this was a board goal for this school year. And our team has taken that goal seriously, and we're looking to bring that to the board, hopefully, if we can iron out all the specifics, late in June. And we're pretty proud of that, and that'll have implications for both our educational work that we do in the school, but our facilities programming as well. I also am going to share this. I appreciate, of course, what Sarah said when she introduced me, and I want to add this context as well to the context she said, which is, the challenges of educating kids over this past school year. We have at this school, if you go through our division heads, our athletic directors, our directors, assistant superintendents, superintendent, a total of 13 administrators who are first year in their roles this year at the high school. 13 different administrators. We've gone through a serious transition as we went from last year to this year. And I would be completely remiss if I'm in any sort of public space and don't commend that team for how well in novel situations, novel in so many ways, right? They've risen to the challenge. So kudos to them. And finally, I'm going to do a little, call. Does anybody know? Can you tell me right now what tagarista means? Does anybody know exactly what tagarista means? Anybody? Tagarista? You need to know this. This is our yes. Do we know? Maybe this is our school's motto. Tagarista. It's Greek. We usually talk about it as those things that are best. You see this all over our kind of signage in various places, those things are best, but literally it just means the best. And that's certainly what we aim to provide at OPRF. Equitable excellence, tagarista, those things that are best. So thank you very much. Glad to talk to you today.
Hello, I'm Suzanne Fairfax. I am a library board trustee, and we're in the midst of an executive search, so you will not meet our new executive director yet because we have not met them. Instead, we are lucky that the board chair, Matt Fruth,
has agreed to come share some of the information about the library with you. Matt is a lifelong resident of Oak Park, grew up here, served on the board of the library since 2005, so wow. We are so lucky that he is our board chair. I can't even tell you, I joined the board within the last year, and the culture that he creates and nurtures and sustains on our board is amazing, of like transparency and honesty and connection and caring about like what we're carrying forward at this moment. And the library is doing amazing work. I am so proud to be connected to a library doing the work that is being done in Oak Park. And Matt will share more about it, but I just want to say thank you, Matt, because there's been a lot, the pandemic years, there's a lot going on, and he's been really wonderful. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, my name is Matt Fruth. I am the current board president. I am in my 5th term on the library board, the old hand in village government, as it were. Is that a little bit better? There we go. Okay. Yes, so as Suzanne said, we are in the middle of our searching for our new executive director. We most reluctantly let David Sellup retire earlier this year. He had been a great asset to the library in this community and was responsible during COVID to helping make sure, as with the schools and many other our partners in the room, that our services were able to transition to a more robust virtual format and footprint. The Oakmark Library operates 3 physical spaces, 1 virtual space, and a roving remote through our book bike. So we have our Maze branch down there on Scoville, just off of 290. Our Maze branch, the main branch on Lake Street, and then the Dole, where we occupy a floor in the Dole Center, which is owned and operated in whole by our friends at the Park District, who have been wonderful landlords, and we appreciate all of their support and all of the work that they have done on that building and that property. So as we look at what the library has done on equity and inclusion, we have been on a multi-year process with that, initiated in large part through from feedback and a framework from our staff, going all the way back to the elimination of late fees. For our collections. We were one of the first public libraries in Illinois and on the leading edge nationally to eliminate late fees for all materials. And as someone who myself was originally on the board at that time, I was initially resistant to that. I came from a place of having worked in retail and wanting to make sure that things came back. And through our staff's advocacy and, bringing forward that this was an equity issue that was preventing those in our community who most needed access to materials from getting those materials, that late fees were not an incentive to things coming back. They were a discouragement from people coming into the building and getting things at all, because people were embarrassed. They didn't want to admit that they had done something wrong. They didn't know that they could work with our staff to eliminate those fees. So by removing that barrier of access, we were able to increase our circulation, increase those who use our services and our materials, and we have not suffered any kind of loss of materials. We have not been negatively impacted by this program. The materials are still accessible. Our staff has continued to do things looking at a collection audit from an equity perspective, looking at what authors we have, particularly in the children's department, because children's book publishers are some of the best publishers for sharing information about who is represented in their books from a gender, racial, ethnic perspective, as well as their authors' demographic information. So our staff looked at that and looked at the materials that we have, the publishers that are out there. The publishing industry is still very white. And we thought we were doing a really good job. Our staff thought they were doing a really good job, and they were, but they realized that they could be doing better. Having looked at that and taking a real hard look at what we were doing, but our staff was able to identify the importance of representation in the books our children read. When you see yourself in a story, you see yourself, the person who looks like you, accomplishing things, solving problems, achieving things, that matters. So our staff has continued to do that. We have brought in, again, being on the leading edge in the country of bringing a social worker in to our staff to help be in the building and present with the folks who come into our building, students, adults, to provide those services. And we have our staff has presented at national conferences, library conferences, in sharing that information and sharing that process and sharing the work that they do to help other libraries do that as well. Now, for things that you may not know, if you didn't know those things already that I just mentioned, we have an incredible amount of digital resources available for the community, not just for students doing their papers, access to genealogical and ancestry databases that if you are interested in building out your family tree, looking into where your family came from, as well as access to newspapers, local as well as national, that will get you behind the paywall for articles. They may not necessarily be the same day, but you will be able to access, those articles from the Chicago Tribune to do those, to access that information as you are, as an adult, just looking to do those pieces. So I think those are kind of two things that I think a lot of people may not know. And we are also in the middle of filling another vacancy on our board. Hopefully we'll have that soon. So we had 17 applicants from the community for that vacant seat. We are in the middle of our executive director search. We had over 40 applicants from across the country for our executive director position. We are in the middle of doing first round interviews with that, and we'll hopefully in the coming weeks be getting a list of finalists for the board to consider to bring in for additional interviews. But it has been an exciting process to be on the board during all this. When I first came on the board, the Kindle was not a thing. So I have seen public libraries transform an incredible amount over the years, and it's been a privilege to help support our staff and make that transition and really take over a new space in how public libraries operate. Thank you.
Hello again. I'm Eric Davis, Township Trustee. I just want to add a personal note. I am also, as Suzanne said, very grateful for Matt Fruth's leadership at the library. From the Township standpoint, our collaboration has been incredibly important. At a personal level, I don't know how our family would have functioned without some of the wonderful things the library provides. So, but that's a climate and that's an attitude, and it doesn't happen by accident. So I want to recognize Matt for his leadership and the great things that have been happening there. over the years. I talked about collaboration, and I think that's a hallmark of the person I'm pleased to introduce here. Gavin Morgan is our executive director at the Township. I want to also commend Gavin, as I know each of the board members feels, for his incredible leadership during the pandemic. The speed with which the Township was able to pivot to provide the kinds of services that suddenly became necessary during the pandemic, particularly to some of our most vulnerable communities, whether it's seniors, people with mental health challenges, our at-risk youth. Gavin provided incredible leadership in helping us pivot almost overnight to an unprecedented service demand. I also want to, among things you may not know, Kevin mentioned earlier Evanston and the challenges. We stole Gavin from Evanston many years ago when I was on the board. So we're absolutely thrilled to have him here and the wonderful things that he's able to provide. As I mentioned, we are your voice to folks like Gavin, and look forward to affording you the opportunity to hear from him now. I want to introduce Gavin Morgan.
Thank you, Trustee Davis. And Kevin, I have the honor of having worked in 2 of the 3 communities in Illinois that have a local health department. So Stickney's the other one. But and I also thank you, Eric. That recognition of the way that the Township was able to pivot is a testimony to our staff, the professionalism and the focus on the people that we serve at the Township enabled our team to, as Eric said, pivot quickly to provide the necessary services during the pandemic. That included setting up a hotline to help seniors through the process of getting their vaccinations from the village health department, providing transportation for some of those seniors to those sites where the vaccinations were taking place, and answering lots of questions in that process. It became much more than just this is how you register, and we helped a lot of people that way. And I want to start with the equity question. And I will say that starts at the top of our organization at the board level, where they set that as a priority. They said they seek out a range of perspectives before they make any decisions. They collect as much information from as many points of view as possible. And that has set a good example for the Township. But I will say that's reflected in our advisory committees, our youth services committee, senior services committee. It's reflected in the makeup of the board itself, and it comes down into the staff level. And at the staff level, over the past year, we've spent a lot of effort and a lot of time looking inward and doing a lot of internal work to develop a climate of curiosity, a climate of respect within our organization in preparation of turning outward, and that the library will recognize that phrase because we got it from them through a collaboration with the Harwood Institute and the library. We were able to get some of that good medicine. But turning outward so that this culture comes into our interactions with the public, our interactions with the people that we serve on a daily basis, whether that be in youth services, senior services, or general assistance. And I'll get to general assistance later. And this will also help us with addressing disparities within the service system in our community, and how we can partner with others to address those disparities, address barriers to access, such as transportation. We are in communication with the Park District. As Jan mentioned, they allowed the use of their buses when they're not using them for their programming to subsidize the 3 buses that the Township owns, so that we can provide the maximum amount of transportation to those we serve, either people, seniors or people with disability at this point. some of the conversations we were having are around how to extend that to youth who need, for whom the lack of transportation is a barrier for participation in some of the programs, either at the schools or at the park district, even the library. So those are conversations that we're constantly having, and it's not always just transportation. Sometimes we're talking about housing, and sometimes we're talking about a specific family or a specific individual, but we always talk about what the lessons we're learning from working with this individual or this family, how that can be expanded to the system, and how we can address those, again, those barriers, those needs that are in the community and that we're seeing on a daily basis. We also partner straddling the line between equity and partnerships. We see the clients that we serve, the people that we serve, the individuals and the families as our partners in their service. So we're not just, while sometimes we are, for example, with senior services, we're saying, we're taking what IDOA, the Illinois Department on Aging, is telling us, these are the requirements you have to meet in the care that you're providing. We're also talking with our clients, what do you need? What will make your life better? And self-determination is key to all of the services we provide, and we're not trying to apply a one-size-fits-all to anybody. It's very important to us what those that we serve are looking for. Talking about some of the new collaborative efforts with our governing partners, I think you've gotten the picture from all of my colleagues here that there is a lot of collaboration going on. We could spend days talking about that, but since I was told by Luann to focus on new collaborations, I will first talk about an old one. The Youth Engagement Program, which was previously known as the Youth Interventionist Program, was begun in 1995, and it was begun in response to some local violence among youth, and all of the taxing bodies in both Oak Park and River Forest, all 11 taxing bodies, so 2 villages, 2 townships, 3 school districts, 2 park districts, and 2 library districts all came together and entered into an intergovernmental agreement to provide youth intervention services to both communities. And the reason I'm talking about that under new collaborations is that agreement has been renewed every 2 years. In the past few years, the villages had to step out of the agreement, but we continue working with the police departments and the adjudication in both villages. But what we're doing this year is the 9 taxing bodies that are still in that agreement the agreement is changing to the Youth Engagement Agreement. And what we've seen over the past few years, especially during the pandemic, is a lot of the needs have shifted to mental health needs. So our staffing has changed. It's more of a counseling orientation. We've hired licensed social workers and counselors to provide the services. And at the same time, we're still doing consulting and training with all of our partner taxing bodies so that when we get a call from the Park District that Jan is seeing more negative activities or poor decision making at the rec centers, we will come out with our staff. We will engage the youth and try to help with that situation, help with the decision making, help with the activities that they're engaged in at the rec centers. And that's just one of the ways that the program is shifting. We felt like the youth engagement name was more aligned with how the service provision has changed, because it is more about engaging the youth than intervening and stopping them. So again, that's being renewed as we speak, sorta. All of the taxing bodies that are currently have that on their agenda have just approved it or are about to approve it. I'm hopeful. Another thing that I wanted to talk about, and there's a report of our last year's statistics. Our fiscal year at the township runs from April 1 to March 31st. There's a report for the Youth Interventionist Program. It was on the desk as you came in, and it looks like this on one side and this on the other side. We report to all of the boards of the taxing bodies involved every month, and then we sent out this annual report at the end of our fiscal year this past March. Excuse me. And so that shares some of the numbers in that program. But the other program I wanted to talk about is the home repair program, which is relatively new to the community. And that sheet looks like this. The home repair program is a collaboration between the Village of River Forest, the Village of Oak Park Township, and River Forest Township. And it you can read through here, but it provides home repair handyman services basically for seniors in Oak Park and River Forest. And you'll see that we've served over 100 unduplicated residents. The program began in July of 2021, so it does qualify as a new collaboration. But you can see that we have served a wide swath of the population, and that program continues. And this year, it's expanding to also provide services to folks that are between 18 and 59 with a disability. So it's now serving seniors and people with disabilities. And we are also looking to expand and bring in a program that we found out about from the northwest suburbs called CAPABLE, which stands for Community Aging in Place, Advancing Better Living for Elders. And that program is a joint effort of not only handyman services, but it brings in another aspect of occupational therapy to those homes where we're doing the repairs. And these are the kind of things, back again to Trustee Davis's point about the township pivoting. One thing that our staff at the township is really good at is identifying new needs as they come up, or shifting needs as that comes up, and finding a way to address those new needs. And there's a passion to that and a dedication to that I can't say enough about how impressed I am with our staff and their ability to do that. They are not, government is not known for being entrepreneurial, but the township has found a way to make it that way. And I also want to say, just, since I'm last, I get this opportunity to say how in awe I am of my professional colleagues in this community. I admire your passion, your professionalism, and your dedication to this community. I've worked here almost 14 years, and Jan, the last 10 have been the best. But even my new colleagues, thank you, for joining us. I'm excited about working with you, both you, Kevin, and Dr. Shaw. And it's just, I'm constantly, like I said, I'm constantly in awe of your genius. So thank you for bringing that. Thank you for sharing it. And thank you for being a partner to the township. Like I said, the list goes on and on of partnerships. So, on the question of what you don't know, what do you know about the township? Is there anybody that says, we had a township? When you think of the township, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Okay. we have an educated group here, because when I'm out in the community, it's the assessor's office. Oh, you work with Ali El Safar is the township assessor, and people tell me I get to work with him. Yeah, I'm 2 doors down from him, and I am fortunate, because there's no one who knows local taxes better than Ali. But that's usually the first thing I get out in the community, and we're working on that. We are about to launch a new brand for the township, and you'll be hearing more about that in our new messaging in the short future. Early June, we're going to be really kicking that campaign into high gear. Because what we noticed in surveying the community and our partners is that people don't know enough about what the township does, and that's one barrier to access, is that the knowledge that the services that we provide are out there. For example, I mentioned general assistance, and that is financial assistance, kind of financial assistance of last resort. If you aren't getting any kind of government funds through TANF or through Social Security, we're there with general assistance, and it's for unemployed individuals. And currently, our caseload is in the mid-50s. For a few years, it had studied out in the mid-30s. So we've seen an increase during the pandemic. And we are prepared to do more in that area. So that's all I have.
Hi, we're going to be a little opportunistic this morning, because one of the citizens that's here with us today has an interesting day job that is of potential benefit to all the units of government that are here. I guess I would say except for the township, because we're the only ones that already use this service. But I'd like to introduce former Triton College trustee Thomas Gary, who's going to talk briefly about a program that he does with the state, and then we're going to introduce Cheryl Potts from the CMHP.
Good morning, everybody. As a member of the public, I first, for everything else, thank you, Eric. Thank you, members of IGOV. I want to thank you all simply for your service to the community, especially the last couple of years. Wow, right? Those of you who were elected 2019 and before, you had no idea what you were about to get yourselves into. So I very much thank you for your service. As Eric mentioned, I am a former trustee at Triton College. I was elected at the same time as Matt Fruth was for the first time. So thank you again, Mr. Fruth, for your service. So I understand the position that you all are in as trustees, as elected trustees representing our community. My day job is with the State Treasurer's Office, Treasurer Mike Frericks. I run a small program that is for the benefit of you all as local governments. One of the things that you'll notice is, especially for your agencies that take in revenues directly from constituents, trying to deal with payment processing systems and solutions, having to deal with contracts, having to deal with security requirements. Well, the state of Illinois, the Treasurer's Office, can assist you with that. We have a payment system solution that we've been operating for about 20 years now, called ePay. Allows, because of our size and because of our the amount of volume that we generate, we have about 500 local government participants as well as state agencies. We were able to process about $3.5 billion in credit card, debit, and e-check or ACH payments, about 12 million transactions. If you registered or renewed your license your driver's license or your car registration through the Secretary of State's office, that was through ePay. If you have made a payment through, you bought a book at the University of Illinois at Chicago's bookstore, or you bought a ticket to watch a game in Champaign, the entire University of Illinois system runs through ePay. So we can certainly handle your transactions as well. Many local governments also have to manage, not just manage that revenue as income, but also have to manage and deal with investable assets. Having reviewed many of your audits and financial statements, certainly many of our organizations here can use the benefit of being able to invest in a fund that provides safety to their assets, that provides liquidity, being able to access those funds at the moment you need them, as well as competitive yield. And that's where Illinois Funds comes in. It is a local government investment pool. It's one of the first state-established investment pools in the nation. It's been in operation since 1975. It's AAA rated, and it's been AAA rated since 1996. Just one correction, Eric. 2 of the local governments here are participants of Illinois Funds. The Township, thank you very much, and the library. Thank you very much from the library board. But being able to invest those assets as you're planning through, many times it's not just that you're looking to move in your revenues from fees or other remittances you're receiving from your constituents. You may also be needing to park money as you're planning out for recovery funds, or you're planning out for capital issues, or a bond issue that you've just gotten through, and now you're looking to park the proceeds while you're going through your capital planning process. Well, the Illinois Funds, as an investment pool, allows you that opportunity to park that money safely while being able to have access to it same day. If your government needs that money to pay a bill, to do whatever you're seeking to do, you'll have access to that money same day. Now we have in providing these types of funds, we have been working with about 1,500 local governments throughout the state, local governments and state agencies that also have been able to take advantage of these services. We have, in this period of rising interest rates, we'd like to think that we can be able to provide you all a competitive fund to be able to support you all to do the things that you're seeking to do for your community. Our website is, I can give you 2 websites. It's either Illinois, spelled out, Illinois Funds, FUNDS.com, or Illinois ePay.com. Again, thank you all for your service. I'm Thomas Gary with the Treasurer's Office, State Treasurer's Office. Looking forward to connecting with you at any future event. If you wish, I will definitely have materials. I'll email.
Speaking of passionate professional excellence, it's my pleasure to introduce the Executive Director of the Community Mental Health Board of Oakmark Township, which qualifies as the local agency with the longest name here today. And Cheryl Potts comes to the township and to the Community Mental Health Board with a wealth of experience in the nonprofit sector, the for-profit sector, all of the sectors. And she brings a perspective about mental health that is wide-ranging, broad, and deep. And she's going to talk about community mental health in Oak Park.
It's always the fun game of what will my makeup look like after wearing a mask for 2 hours. So, hopefully there's no Joker lipstick going on here. Thanks, Gavin. I actually never worked in the for-profit sector, but I thought about it, but did not. But I'm really happy to be here today. I've been the executive director since September, and I am trying very hard to fill the big shoes of Lisa DeVivo, who is my predecessor, but she left a wonderful organization for me to walk into. As a person living with a mental health disorder, as a survivor of sexual trauma, as someone who's lost a brother to suicide, I come to this field very earnestly and with a lot of passion, that there's so much to work to do to break down the stigma and to make sure that people can access care. And as an Oak Park resident and a taxpayer, I am really privileged to be here with all of you and to hear so much about the services that we provide to our community in an effort to take care of our residents. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about what the Community Mental Health Board is, what our priorities are in the community, and then also talk a little bit about what you can do in each of your individual agencies to help improve the mental health of Oak Park residents. So the Community Mental Health Board, often termed the 708 Board, which some people might have heard that term before, is actually established under the Illinois Community Mental Health Act, and there are 708 boards throughout the state of Illinois. Vicki mentioned that we were established almost 50 years ago, May of 2023, which is also Mental Health Awareness Month, May, but in 2023 it'll be our 50th anniversary of service here in Illinois. In Oak Park. We were established by a referendum through the township, and we assess a tax levy that is specific to meeting the mental health, substance use, and intellectual developmental disability needs of Oak Parkers. We do this through assessment, planning, funding, and evaluation of services throughout Oak Park. And so we enter into a specific needs assessment process and gaps analysis. We develop a strategic plan of action based on that needs assessment. We form consortiums, partnerships to inform our work, and then we fund and evaluate direct services. It's important to talk a little bit about what the Community Mental Health Board doesn't do. So I want to be clear that we are not able to provide funding if other funding exists for the services. So we cannot supplant commercial insurance, we cannot supplant Medicaid, Medicare, or any other federal or state funding. We do not provide direct services. We get a lot of phone calls at the Community Mental Health Board hoping that we have therapists on staff that people can access. We do not provide any direct services. And trust me, you don't want me providing you direct services. I have a background in mathematics. I'm not a social worker. We are a part of the township, but we do have our own distinct board of directors. That board of directors is approved by the township supervisor, and I included a handout at the table that talks a little bit about what we do at the Community Mental Health Board, and on the back of it lists our 9-member board of directors. You probably recognize many of those names. These are people who are residents of Oak Park and who are very active in the community. And even more, they bring a wealth of experience to the table to help inform how we move forward.
So we have the former CEO of Pillars is on there. We have faculty from Northwestern Feinberg School of Medicine. We have the chief medical officer for Swedish Hospital, and then many others who have personal experiences with mental health or substance use or IDD. This next page is a whole bunch of statistics about mental health, which I'm not going to bore you with today. Usually I can have them up behind me on a PowerPoint, but the most important thing to note, and I'm sure this comes as no surprise to you, is that the prevalence of mental health, substance use disorder, and IDD is high, and the access to care is low. This is a crisis that existed before COVID and has only been more exacerbated by the pandemic. And there are a couple statistics I just want you to walk away with, though. Over 50% of people are going to experience a mental health challenge in their life, and only 55% of those individuals receive treatment for it. For those with substance use disorders, only 10% of those who are seeking treatment are able to engage in care. There's no other field in the world where we would accept that, where people are not able to access the treatment that they need to live stable lives. So instead of going into those statistics, just plant in your head that we know that there is a crisis and it was exacerbated by COVID. So what is the Community Mental Health Board doing about it? What are our priorities? Well, I talked a little bit about needs assessment, and right now is the prime time for us to be doing that. So we're partnering with the village in their I-Plan process. We're partnering with the township through the needs assessment process. And we're also working with NIU to do a survey of local mental health, substance use, and IDD needs. That survey data and inputs should be, we should have analysis by the end of the summer, but there are some key things that I'm sure will not be a surprise and will show up in those findings that will impact our strategic plan moving forward. One, we're going to hear loud and clear that there is not timely access to care. I don't know if anyone has tried to access therapy services or, God forbid, psychiatry services. There are significant wait times, and that is especially true for youth and children. Right now, there was a study that was done through the state of Illinois, and right now the current behavioral health workforce can only meet a quarter of the needs that are out there today. We are in a workforce crisis, and we are hearing about the Great Resignation, but again, the issues that are facing behavioral health have been compounded over decades and have only been exacerbated by COVID. So there are some big problems that CMHB is going to be focusing on over the next few years, but I really want to talk to you about what you all can be doing to help increase the mental health of Oak Park. First, it sounds so simple, but just understand that mental health is a continuum. So often we think of it as a binary. It's either mentally healthy or mentally ill, and that's not the case. Like physical health, there is a continuum, and people can fluctuate on that continuum. And we all have mental health. Whether it is maybe we're having a really good year, really good day, really good period in our lives, or maybe people are experiencing episodic challenges. So you could have grief associated with loss. You could have fear, you could have anxiety over life changes, and they might be episodic, and you have that experience for a few months, and then you move on. There are people like me who have a chronic disease. I will always need treatment for my disease. It's not episodic. And then there are individuals who are experiencing serious mental health challenges that are disruptive to their livelihood. That whole continuum it can fluctuate for people, and we need to understand that. And also, like physical health, we need to understand that
mental health treatment is effective, and it's most effective when people enter into care early. And when people are not treated, it can lead to acute crises. So treatment is so important. I started my career in HIV services back in the 90s. And in HIV services, when I first started working, the course of treatment for someone who is newly diagnosed was not to initiate medication therapies. It was to wait until that person had an AIDS diagnosis. Very quickly, we learned people get really sick really quickly and have low quality of life. We find out that once they initiate the medication treatment, it's much harder for them to have standard physical health again. And it was really expensive for the system. Someone who has an AIDS diagnosis is much more expensive to treat than someone who is early into their HIV diagnosis. And so we learned pretty quickly that, hey, let's start medication treatments early and see what the health outcomes were. Health outcomes were much higher, people had much higher quality of life, and the cost of treatment was much lower for the system. Mental illness has been around for a very long time, much longer than HIV, and we still haven't learned that lesson with mental health. And part of the reason for that, and one of the reasons that was identified by Oak Parkers in the last I-Plan, was that the biggest barriers to getting into care were stigma and cost of care. And so these things are things that you all can help with, and that's why I want to get to 5 specific recommendations that I have for you to take back to your agencies and your staff. First and foremost, explicitly talk about mental health to help destigmatize it. I've been in meetings with many of you, and one of the first things I said today is, I'm a person living with a mental health disorder. I'm a survivor of sexual trauma. I lost a brother to suicide. That opens the door in conversation for so many people, because a lot of people who haven't experienced a mental health disorder have a picture in their head of who is mentally ill. And usually that picture is not me, but I can break down that barrier. And it also, for the person who is struggling, it provides an outlet for them to be like, yeah, well, you know, what did you do? How do I get involved in care? Things like this we take for granted. I'm thrilled to see on the wall the tech support for the students here at D97 to say, hey, this is a mental health outlet for you. Putting these out there, putting those messages out there to your staff and to the public through your events, so key, so important. Number 2, help me increase our behavioral health workforce. And what I mean by that is that not all mental health messages have to be conveyed through a clinical office or through a clinician. Collectively in this room, we touch every single person in Oak Park. Every single person, every single child, every single senior, every single person. So let's think outside of the box about what strategies we can use in order to engage Oak Park residents. I'm thrilled. We're a year from now, I am already packing my bags. We are moving into the Community Recreation Center. So excited about that, talking about the interconnectedness between physical and mental health care, and being able to provide services to youth and to everyone, but I'm very excited about the youth serving services. D200 and D97 are doing some really groundbreaking work with partnerships with DePaul University, with youth services at the Township, with organizations like NAMI and YEMBA, to make sure that we are providing education and working to get information to youth. The library, you guys mentioned that you have the Director of Social Services as well as a Manager of Teen Services, both who are really working hard
in mental health, and we're having conversations with them on a regular basis. And also, think about, given the fact that so many of us do have public-facing positions, think about getting your staff trained in mental health first aid. I cannot tell you how important that is. Jan and I work together to make sure that the youth staff were trained in mental health first aid for youth. And a lot of people think, well, I don't even want to open that can. I don't want to talk about mental health. Well, guess what? It's not a question of if you will meet someone who's having a mental health challenge, it's when. And you want to have the tools, and you want your staff to have the tools in order to have those conversations. And those conversations do not need to be therapy. In fact, I do not want any of your staff providing therapy unless they have the letters LCSW after their titles. But I liken it to the fact that I went through CPR and first aid through the Red Cross. Didn't make me a heart surgeon. So why would mental health first aid make anyone a therapist? It really is just information and tools that help people to identify a challenge and get the person connected to care. The third area that is really important to me, and I know that President Skaman is really sick of hearing me talk about it, maybe not, but is investing in the appropriate crisis response continuum. Not program, not one intervention, but it needs to be a continuum of services so that people get the right level of service for the right problem at the right time. And I joke because I don't think that President Skaman is sick of hearing me talk about it, because she's as enthusiastic as I am about how we can move forward. And that's what I love, is that there is passion in this community. And I'm also not going to use this to rag on police officers, because quite the contrary. What I want is for police officers to not have to be the ones who respond to mental health crises. They are here for our protection and safety. I want them to focus on that, and then have the appropriate staff, appropriate trained individuals to help manage a mental health crises. And one of the things that you can do in this is that if there is a need to call for crisis response, to call 911, make sure that you're calling and saying the appropriate information. How many people know that in Oak Park we have crisis intervention trained officers? Okay, it's about half the room. So these officers are specifically trained to help de-escalate mental health crises. But dispatch may or may not know to send out a crisis intervention trained officer. Be explicit if you are handling a mental health crisis. Say, I would like a crisis intervention trained officer to be dispatched. And then that is one step that you can take to make sure that we're having the appropriate response. Number 4 is to look at your benefits package. That's probably the most boring suggestion I have, but it's one of the most important. You employ a lot of people who live, work, and play in Oak Park. And one of the most significant things that you will do is that you're providing income and you're providing health insurance to those staff. And not all health insurance benefits are created equal. I will not bore you with the studies, but I have plenty of studies, if you are interested, that have been done around the disparities of people who are accessing behavioral health care and have to go out and network compared to those who have medical services. And we all know that when you go out and network, it's really expensive. So there are ways that you can assess, there are actual tools that you can utilize that help assess your health insurance plans to make sure that it's meeting the comprehensive behavioral health care needs of your staff. And the last thing that I just want to say is let's not be complacent. I've lived in Oak Park a really long time. I love Oak Park. But I have noticed a trend sometimes where we can check a box and pat ourselves on the back and move on to the next issue.
And when it comes to behavioral health care, we can't do that. It's a constant need. And so I want to make sure that we continue to work towards it and being a leader in our community with increasing mental health. And the good thing is that you have a very willing partner in this with me and with the Community Mental Health Board board members. So please don't ever hesitate to reach out. My contact information is on the back of the handout that I gave to you. There are few people in this room who know that I'm very responsive and maybe overeager sometimes, but please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.